Hey everyone, so next in our series on the Ionian Islands, and one that people always spoke of very highly, it's Kefalonia. I wasn't able to get any particularly good footage on the flight in, but Kefalonia is, well, it's really just a mountain, or rather several mountains with some human settlements just perched on the edge. I mean, video flattens the perspective so it doesn't look like all that much, but it really dominates the entire southern chunk of the island. Now, it seems like Kefalonia's airport is a bit of a building site right now. We had chosen to stay in the capital, Argostoli, as it looked like transport options would be a bit slim if we were further out. So, day one was a deliberate chill day, except, well, that's a really poor choice of phrase. This was August, so it was hot. Really, really hot. There's no other way to say it. We wandered down the main coast road with a bit of a non-committal amble. First impressions, well, my first impression was, where is everyone? Quick bit of history. Despite a bit of changing hands through the centuries, low-angle flag shot, one of the most defining events in most recent times was a massive earthquake in 1953. It levelled most of the buildings on the island, and apparently a lot of people just left. But even so, I mean, the boards at the airport were full of flights, most of them from the UK. Where are the tourists? We saw the TUI logo so frequently it seemed like they only just stopped short of planting a flag and declaring an independent republic. So, I don't know, maybe everyone's just holed up in their homogenous all-inclusives, but for the largest urban area on the island, it was, curiously absent of people. We wandered down the Bosset, which is a bridge, or a breakwater, or I guess both. Apparently it's the longest stone bridge in Europe, but I mean, don't hold your breath. Just wait for Bosnia in a few episodes' time. I mean, it's not horrible, but as Argostoli monuments go, this is basically it. But a couple of days later, a cruise ship was docked and vomiting its people into the town, and you could just see them all standing around on the Bosset taking photos, but looking rather unsure of what to do next. There really is not a lot of sites or places of note here. I mean, there's a museum, but it's tiny and appeared to never be open. There's some churches, but they're all shiny and new, and well, any more than a glance and you're basically done. So what does that leave you with? Well, I mean, I go back and forth on the whole slow time thing. I'm normally quite keen to be doing and going, which is probably for the best, otherwise this blog would scarcely run over 2 minutes. But I am aware that taking time is, well, there's something to it. So for maybe the first time in the whole year, I resolved to sit and watch and think, and try not to think of the next thing. I mean, I can't say it comes naturally, but hey, going on a trip that actually involves me taking a break, that's sort of a new one for me. We headed to the northern tip of the Argostoli Peninsula to catch the last of the sun, and it was pretty special.
Dear guests, you are kindly requested not to throw papers in the toilet. There is a problem of over-flouded. Thank you.
Well, next day, got up early. It's not exactly sunrise when you're ringed by mountains, but the colours were still pretty beautiful, and had a quick espresso. There's also these watermelons, which are large enough to smuggle an assault rifle inside. I mean, don't know what you're supposed to do with that information, but hey, look, there it is. We crossed over the Bosset to head for our first spot on the map. It was a little over an hour's walk, and while I am well up for that on paper, you know what, I'm just going to skip to the conclusion of the video here. I would suggest hitting Kefalonia outside of August. I mean, it's not a busyness problem, grief no, but for a pasty Brit like me, it was on the uncomfortable side of hot. And man, we were feeling it, walking up the side of the main road with no footpath, up a hill to, well, basically a remote hillside. So these are the Cyclopean walls of the ancient settlement of Krani. There are various levels of construction, but the main stones are 6th or 7th century BC, which is interesting as this is just when Greece was emerging from what's known as the Greek Dark Age. Without going all Bronze Age collapse on all of you, all of the more famous marble temples and stuff that we're used to seeing from ancient Greece are more kind of from the 5th century onwards, and ruins from this earlier period of classical era Greece are something of a rarity. So Krani is not super easy to get to, but it's pretty rewarding. We hurried back down the route as we had a bus to catch. Having seen that just sitting in Argostoli isn't exactly a white-hot thrill ride, we were heading to the very northern tip of Kefalonia to Fiskardo. Now, I heard in advance that the ride there itself is pretty spectacular and, no kidding. Even though it's just a public bus, just this journey should be down as one of the unmissable tourist things to do in Kefalonia. I'm not exaggerating. The bus is air-conditioned and new, the coastal roads are just ridiculous. Oh, and I think I should explain bus window roulette. Okay, so you're in a different country and you're travelling around. Your first instinct is, of course, to try and capture all the beautiful things you're seeing. It's not a hard one to explain. However, no matter what country you're in, about 90% of the time, what happens is you'll get a spectacular shot all lined up and you're just about managing to hold the camera still, and you'll get about 30 or 40 frames before the trees and bushes all jump in like and completely destroy the shot you were trying to take. I mean, I always tell myself I'll get some good footage, and in reality it's normally about 40 or maybe 50 clips, all about 3 or 4 seconds in length and all too shaky to use. Still, it passes the time. Back to Kefalonia, I'd actually recommend making this bus trip up the western spine of the island quite early on. It gives you a cross-section of the island, and it kind of means you get the drop on the bus connections because they're not super obvious to figure out first time round. So an hour and a half later we arrived in Fiskardo. There's obviously a gorgeous little compact beach or two. There's this Roman cemetery, which is, kind of a cool find. The main bay of the town is pretty much just yachts all fighting for space, but if you're noticing a pattern, again, there's not super loads here to do but sit and eat. So we ate and wandered a bit more. I mean, Fiskardo is charming. All the postcard painted buildings are washed with pink flowers. We headed into the trees on the northern scoop of the bay to see a couple of Fiskardo's historic sites. There's this ruined Byzantine basilica, which was very pretty. I couldn't help but wonder if this was in better shape before 1953, but, well, it's pretty impressive for the 6th century. Past the boring lighthouse that wasn't Venetian was the much smaller but more awesome Venetian lighthouse, noteworthy for being Venetian and therefore awesome. I might not be on the pulse of public opinion there, but okay, yes, it's pretty small, but there it is. This was the heat of the day, and we were pretty much just hiding in any patches of shade we could find. While you're there, you have pretty amazing views to the surrounding. To the north, you have the island of Fiskardo, which at this point we hadn't been to, but if you've seen the previous episode, you'll know that I managed to get there another time. There's also Ithaca, which is over there, which we also didn't do. Sorry, Ithaca. So we trooped back to Fiskardo and, well, sat in the shade. The boats that had barged their way in earlier trickled away, or in the case of the Nidri Star, played the same 3 garbage songs at full volume with a big stupid grin on its face like a toddler that just filled a nappy. And gradually you got to see what the village could be like with fewer people. But yeah, I mean, call it the Fiskardo problem. If you just stumbled on this place and there was no one around, you'd feel like you'd won the jackpot. A few hippies in the 70s moved there to what was just a tiny fishing village. They opened a bar, and the reputation of this quiet little spot grew, and now it's just crammed with people, paradoxically ruining the vibe just by being there. And yeah, that includes me, and you, and we all have a way of ruining stuff sometimes just by showing up and demanding more amenities and being touristy. I'm not some utopianist. I'm as much of the reason that Fiskardo is not a sleepy spot, but a bit of a scrum. It's a shame, but there it is. Back on the bus, I was feeling pretty smug on the way here because we'd picked the left side, which is the side to be on to see all of the coast on your journey north. I mean, seriously, it's all on the left. So on the way back, everyone had sort of figured this out, so everyone sat on the right. However, on the way back, you are unavoidably driving right next to the barrier, and I made the mistake of looking down, and the highly uneven weight distribution got a bit frightening. I mean, it's not like putting all the weight on the outer edge of a turning vehicle would, I don't know, increase the centrifugal force outwards, tipping the whole bus sideways into the abyss. I mean, that's just crazy talk, and also how physics works. Oh god, please don't go too fast. However, we avoided making ourselves into a smouldering wreck at the bottom of a steep cliff, had a slow dinner at the water's edge, and yeah, that was a good day. Oh, and hey, back in Argostoli, we actually found some people. Yeah, partially solved the mystery of where everyone was. They just didn't seem to want to show their faces before 8 p.m. I had also kind of assumed that the waterfront would have been the busiest thoroughfare, but it seemed like this square, a few hundred yards inland, is what gets all the footfall. So day 3, we got the 7:45 a.m. bus to Posada. To be honest, I was up late the night before trying to figure out all the permutations of buses to different places, but the simple fact is that there's not a lot to work with. Kefalonia is pretty great in the morning, by the way. The light was glorious and it's not too hot, but this doesn't last long. Climbing the very substantial hill, we were more than glad of the little shade the morning provided. So this is the castle of St. George, and it's free. I mean, that's pretty good of them. The castle has a storied history that goes way back, but almost all of what you're seeing is from the Venetians. The Venetians besieged the Ottoman garrison here and successfully took it on Christmas Eve, 1500, and it served as a capital for the south of the island. But basically, when Argostoli was built as a new administrational centre, all of this just fell out of use. I mean, I guess it's positive that the island had moved away from the days of cowering away from pirates to building a low-lying, unfortified port, but seeing the majestic fort fall out of use must have been sad to witness. We also took the short walk down a couple of roads to the Mycenaean cemetery, and we headed back to the bus stop where we were dropped at the base of the hill, and the Posada bus was returning for 11:10, so we waited, and then waited, and yep, we waited. You getting sick of us holding on this shot? Well, then imagine this view for an hour and a half. I mean, I know, now in hindsight, that seems ridiculous. Like, why didn't you just get a taxi or another bus? Well, call it sunk cost fallacy, but for a long time we were just expecting the bus would be coming any moment now, or if not, there was supposed to be another on its way from Poros. I was feeling pretty positive about the buses at the beginning of the week. I mean, look, hey, they go virtually everywhere on the island. They're like a couple of euros. What's not to like? But all of my goodwill towards them pretty much evaporated in that hour and a half. We actually got rescued by a bus going the Fiskardo route, but the opposite way. You see, as it turns out, the buses can be both asymmetrical, as in they don't just turn around and retrace their steps, but also arbitrary, so they might do this or they might not. So unless you're in a major town, the bus might just not go past your stop. Where can you find this information? Well, precisely nowhere. Yeah, I checked the bus station, got every paper timetable, checked every route map, and checked any website that would give me any info. So yeah, did not enjoy getting punked by the buses. And yeah, the infrequency was really starting to get on my nerves. Like, it turned into a travelling salesman problem. If you want to do more than just one thing in a day, then, well, I hope you like diagramming, because you'll have to work those permutations. I mean, I get it. The Greek state, not having the time of their life, rural buses, not super profitable, but I think I might have to revise my attitude towards hire cars. I mean, it adds some stress to proceedings, but not as much as being marooned in a Greek village after the bus timetable stood you up. Okay, so that's really more information than you ever wanted on buses, but hey, welcome to my world. So after that, I was just tired. The bus we would have caught for the afternoon was long gone, so you know what? We rested. We went to Coffee Island, and I'd been so busy sorting buses that I'd forgotten about my first love. I love Coffee Island an embarrassing amount. I mean, a large part of that is almost certainly the Pavlovian association of the Coffee Island logo being present every time I'm on holiday somewhere in Greece, and as such having an amazing time. Now, I genuinely have Coffee Island dreams. I'm not remotely joking, and we're not just talking 2 or 3, we're almost on double figures now. They all tend to follow the same format. In the dream, I'll be in, I don't know, Bristol or something, and for some reason I'll be convinced that I can get to Coffee Island, and then of course I'll do that classic dream thing of failing to do that exact thing for like hours and hours at a time. Okay, but this digression is taking way too long, but for real, I love Coffee Island. There is apparently one in London. I don't know if it's up to the Greek standard. I am way overdue to go and find out. Right, where were we? Oh yes, we made a point of chillaxing in Argostoli. That included Coffee Island, that's how we got onto this. So we wandered back along the waterfront, which, by the way, was still kind of half a building site. Yeah, that is another downside to Greece. There are a lot of construction projects that just stretch into perpetuity. I mean, we were there a long time ago now, but I fully anticipate that all of this is still there right now. We dipped our toes in the water. We took an unrealistically long time just browsing all the cheap sunglasses. Yeah, €8 Ray-Bans. Sure. This must be the result of all those 85% off Ray-Ban sales that the good people of Facebook can't wait to tell me about. Oh, and framed photograph of Hilary Duff, anyone? And then we sat in the square. Interestingly, unlike the busy to and fro of the previous night, the square had reverted back to deserted. The cafes were still nominally open, so we sat, and I took the time to actually type some of the words you're hearing now. Ooh, so meta. Just after we left our apartment, this guy popped out of a corner shop and, completely unprompted, followed us everywhere. Not wanting to be requisitioning someone else's dog, I mean, he was collared. We tried to gently encourage him away, but nope, he stayed by our side for the rest of the day. But I'd learned the hard way before not to get attached. We actually got joined by Scooby-Doo later. I mean, seriously, look, with the blue collar and everything. And yeah, lazy afternoon, who'd have thought. We looked around for a few places for dinner, but we pretty much just settled on this place for the sake of thrift. It was pretty good. If you've not had gyros before, okay, it's everything you could really want from a junk food meal, but more to the point, almost everywhere you go, it's pretty reliably €2.50. And this actually works as kind of a practical money-saving fixture of your holiday. I hadn't realised the disconnect on most Greek menus. It's kind of funny. It's like gyros, €2.50, next dish, €10, everything else €10 or more. It's this weird outlier. And of course, some places just try and charge a tenner for gyros, but the cat is out of the bag that it should only be about the price of a coffee. And hey, I mean, I was really enjoying the vibe from the square. I mean, there was something kind of nice about it. I mean, normally the sound of children playing in my near vicinity is like the screaming of all the denizens of Hades. But there was something delightful just having a square full of children using the smooth flagstones as a speedway track.
So it's been 3 hours. He's actually followed us to our front door. I'm pretty sure if I go in and close this door, I'm going to hell. I'm really sorry, dude. Ouch, that hurt.
Okay, so day 4, and this had some of the most spectacular sights of the whole trip. If tour operators are going to plug an island holiday, they normally need one particular picture to kind of hook you in, and as far as Kefalonia goes, it's probably this. This is Myrtos Beach. We were on the spectacular bus route north-south again, and oh man, look, really don't want to have to talk about buses again. How many paragraphs has this already taken up? Okay, look, so basically, it all switches over in the town of Divarta, and you sort of decant onto a smaller minibus, and that takes you down the winding road to the beach. It was only about 11 in the morning, but it was pretty much already at saturation point with cars. And look, trust me on this one, you do not want to park any further away. Divarta is about 2.5 kilometres back, and look, I'll trek up and down a Jurassic Coast slope with the best of them, but a near 45-degree asphalt slope in what felt like 45-degree heat, you will hate yourself. Don't even think about it. I've seen reviews get a bit sour on Myrtos because of the beach itself. It's not sand per se, but kind of a mixture of pebbles and a fine sort of shingle grit. It's also this brilliant white, which is one of the reasons the beach is so spectacular to photograph. It's sort of busy, but not such that it was cramped. There's, ample space for everyone there. Even with coaches trying to get down there, say a prayer for that guy. I could just keep tossing shots of the beach at you, but we'd spent just under a couple of hours there and we had more adventures to go on. Now, I think you'll trust me at this point when I say that I had looked into the buses exhaustively, and look, there was just simply no way to do Myrtos and the other place we'd wanted to go to, which seems particularly daft since it's only 9 kilometres up the road. You would think that with the buses being as thin on the ground as they were, there'd be a legion of taxi drivers, right? Wrong. They all seem to be in Argostoli, and they all but hang up on you when you tell them you want to be picked up from somewhere else. Look, I tell you, if you've ever tried to find a cab online in another country, you grow a real hatred for the phrase airport transfer. In Kefalonia, they are the worst. So the website will have a drop-down box to choose different start-finish destinations. But really, it just works thus. Hey, choose your destination, like, I don't know, the airport, and we go all over the island. There's the airport, you can get on a connection from the airport to the beautiful airport of Kefalonia, see the unmissable waters of the beautiful airport, and unwind and relax as we take you in comfort and style to the airport. So I'm all like, hey, can we go from Myrtos Beach? Ha! The very idea that you'd try and go somewhere other than an airport. You can't even land a plane on Myrtos Beach. Try the local taxi companies, and the withering contempt with which they refer to the local in that sentence is really spoken with all the condescension of a recently divorced prison warden who is attempting to quit smoking. So can I say my very sincere thanks to KefaloniaTaxiTransfers.com, and be careful as there's several sites with similar URLs. They were pretty much the last place we tried calling before we were about to give up, and well, what are the odds? A cab company that understands that sometimes people need to get between 2 points and neither of them is an airport. I'm sorry, do I sound bitter? Okay, it's time to be the bigger man. So yes, really, really appreciate KefaloniaTaxiTransfers.com for getting us to our next point in the map. This is Asos. So Asos is mainly famous for this island, which is just about connected by a small isthmus, and there's a Venetian fortress seated atop it. Now, I knew there was a little village tucked by the water, and it's like, yeah, cool, whatever. But man, had I gauged that wrong. This was the most beautiful village we'd seen so far on the entire island. The painted houses daubed in flowers and the oh-so-Instagrammable front doors, it was just idyllic. A few people splashing in the water, but not all that busy. We headed over to the island to see the fortress, and just be aware, parking was looking like a bit of a mare. Now, I'll be honest here, I had misjudged the height. There's an actual forced perspective trick that the fortress plays. Its walls are so big that when you look up at the hill, it's like, a few minutes we'll be up there. No. There's a really tranquil path up, and some of it is in the shade, but mostly not, and it's no small endeavour. I wasn't timing, but getting up there took the best part of an hour, and this was in the heat of the day. The views, though, as we went up, they kept getting more incredible. It was at this point I was kind of feeling more like, okay, yeah, I'm now starting to understand the Kefalonia hype. This is, wow. At the top, it was next to deserted. If I recall, I think we saw 2 other human beings, a few goats chilling. Again, no entry fee, so great. After you get through the gate, there's some ruined buildings, but there's not a lot to see because most of it's covered with bushes, trees and undergrowth. Here's the thing, Asos wasn't just a castle on the hill, it was actually an attempt to build a whole town. However, while it has the signature Venetian enthusiasm for forts in unrealistically high places, this belies the really obvious question. So, even though this is really good for resisting a siege, won't it be a real pain to get to? And yes, it was. There's not really a proper water source up there, a bit of an oversight, so they struggled to convince people to move there at all. So we descended back down into the shade again, and believe me when I say, I cannot think of a time before or since that I have been quite this grateful for a Freddo cappuccino. We had a bit of a lazy time before we needed to be looking at retracing our steps again. Asos does really start to look like the Old West once you get the abandoned buildings that abut the slope leading out of the back of the village. But back on the bus, and from the bus onto a different bus, and dinner in Argostoli, and we're down to the final day. Okay, so if I hadn't packed this episode with rants about buses and cabs, then maybe I wouldn't be rushing. I mean, look, I can't be the only one who likes to at least take a shot at chaining the local transport options together, so I hope this will be at least vaguely useful to someone who tries to do the same. These are exactly the sort of things I could have used a heads up about. So we hadn't completely crisscrossed to every corner of Kefalonia, but we'd made pretty good headway, and the last major place that seemed inexcusable to miss was Sami. It's on the... Okay, I don't actually know how to describe that exactly. It's just there. There it is. So what's there? Well, the beach is very pretty and remarkably quiet. This is August, remember? And if you walk along it from Sami to what is technically Milos, you get to the Melisani lake cave. This is another of the big photo ops that travel guides like to lead with. It's an underground cave where the roof had collapsed to let in the sunlight to turn the waters a spectacular electric turquoise. Now, manage your expectations a little bit. This will be busy, but it could have been a lot worse. I've read reviews of hour-long queues, and well, basically, groups get into these boats, the guides row you out and make the same jokes they've made 90 times a day for the last 20 years. You enter the back part of the cave and then out, and that's about 15 minutes altogether for about €7 per head. So yeah, just as long as you reconcile that this is not a place you'll have to yourself, nor somewhere you can swim or Instagram yourself for hours at a time. Other than that, okay, yeah, it's an above-average beauty spot with below-average presentation, but there it is, it's still a solid recommend. Another Fredo in the Shado at a cafe, still virtually deserted at 11 in the morning. Drifted back to Sami. Now, I had something particularly foolhardy to do on foot for the sake of historical ruins. Oh hey, look at that, I've just accidentally come up with the thesis statement of the entire show. But I let Jen kick back in Sami and sit this one out. There's not much to say about my trek other than, yes, it was a 4-kilometre walk up a steep hillside in 35-degree heat. And I guess there were some pretty cool ruins up there, so yeah, life well spent. It's part of the ruins of the ancient Acropolis of Sami, but as it turned out, even I had misjudged the effort required. You see, here's me on a hillside after an hour's walk with less than adequate water, and there, handheld crash zoom, is the top of the Acropolis. Actually, that zoom wasn't really dramatic enough. Let's try that camera movement again. So, bus home, and not to seem too abrupt, but we're going to close this out here as the following morning we were getting a ferry to Zakynthos, so we'll pick that up in the next episode, but I'm going to take a red pen to any more sections that talk about buses, and we'll see you all on the next one.